ready. All right, here we go. All right, everybody, what is up? Welcome to Destination the Show, episode 6. Thank you guys for listening. If you're new, welcome in. If you're coming back to us, thanks for listening. Here, as always, with my guy Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, man, what's up? What's new? What you been up to, man?
Uh, I've been busy coaching middle school football
Good Lord,
and trying
God
and
bless.
trying to do as much as I can outside of that life. But it's busy. I mean, this school's back in session. The NFL starts. I'm coaching football. Baseball's still going on. NBA's a week from training camp. There's just so much happening.
That's a lot
You
going
know, you know
on.
what I'm not doing? I'm not sleeping 14 hours a night.
Okay, so it's a lot going on. So my one question for you coming into the pod today that's more important than anything else that we're going to talk about is on an average night, how much sleep is Jeremy Nygaard getting? Give me a range.
6.5 hours.
Fair. Okay. So the reason I'm asking is breaking news on Twitter yesterday. Caitlin McGrath, uh, MLB reporter for The Athletic, dropped this casually dropped this tweet. Blue Jays starter Yusei Kikuchi thinks he'll be fine for his next start after he left the game with cramps. I'm like, okay, cool. This is interesting. Whatever. Standard injury update. The biggest revelation was that he said it may have been caused, the cramps, that is, by only getting 11 hours of sleep last night instead of the usual 13 to 14.
And he doubled down today and said, "My teammates asked me how I'm able to sleep so much, but like honestly, if you close your eyes, I feel like you should be able to sleep. This is not a human. This is not a human male."
So you immediately quote tweeted this in absolute amazement and wonderment, wondering how anybody could possibly sleep that long. Can you possibly imagine going to bed at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. bedtime, waking up at 10 a.m.?
No, what would have to happen is I'd have to really go on a bender, and it would have to be like 2 a.m. until 4 in the afternoon, and I still couldn't do it.
Oh my god, wild, absolutely wild. Cannot imagine. If you are one of the kind folks that regularly listens to and downloads the show, and you get an average of 12 to 14 hours sleep, let us know. Get in touch with the show. We want to have you on as a guest to pick your brain about what possibly goes on in your life. Um,
You know what else though, before you move on?
huh.
If if I did, it would be a problem because I'd miss all the stuff on Twitter because it only loads for so long. I'd have to set my alarm like halfway through just to catch up to go back to sleep so I could sleep for 7 more hours.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah. Producer Theo suggests we should do a poll of average sleep times for listeners. So we will get we'll get that up on the Twitter tomorrow.
He's my least favorite baseball player.
That's wild. I can't even fathom that. I can't believe there wasn't a follow up question about like what is your standard bedtime because that changes everything. Also,
Oh,
um,
he was waking up at 1 p.m.
so he goes
like
to bed late.
like 11 p.m. to 1 or 11 yeah 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. He
Abs-
never sees the a.m. ever,
that is absolutely
and if he
sensational.
does, he gets cramps.
It's like he was jet lagged the first ever time he came to the United States and just never bothered to get over it. uh,
Unbelievable.
Good times. Okay, well that's a cold open, as you say, Kikuchi's sleep schedule. Today, you guys we're gonna dig into and focus on two topics. We're gonna start with Emmanuel Rodriguez, notable top consensus top 100 Twins prospect, because in short, Jeremy and I have been agreeing too much on the first 5 episodes of the show, so it's time for us to do some disagreeing, and we have some conflicting opinions on Erod, uh, which have been made even more perfect by the currently unfolding events of tonight, but we'll get there. If we have time, We're also going to dig into potential 2024 Rookie of the Year candidates for the Twins, Cubs, and Brewers. As always, we'll finish with a few listener questions. We've got some really, really good ones. This is going to be a Twins-heavy episode today. Housekeeping notes, as always, we're on Twitter at DTS_pod1. Please drop us a follow. Ways that you can support the show for free. Download it. If you like what you heard, we appreciate if you guys give us a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform. And please subscribe to the Twins Daily YouTube channel so we can grow the show and make it better. So, where do you want to start, man? Over to you.
Well, yeah, we can start with Emmanuel Rodriguez. And the reason is we tend to at least see each other's opinion and not totally disagree with it. So, but it's, the draft is hard because you don't get real polarizing guys in the draft where it's like, yeah, we love him or we hate him. There might be some skill sets that we maybe don't agree on what they're going to become. But obviously when you're a draft prospect, there's a chance that you're going to become something. Emmanuel Rodriguez is different. And it's not that I dislike him, right? However, I have a feeling, I get the feeling that he's going to be this prospect that we're all like really excited over, and then we're going to be disappointed about. Now, and I'm not the pessimistic type that's going to say, Royce Lewis is always hurt, he's going to be terrible. Byron Buxton is Mr. Glass, he's always broken. That's not really my thing, but I have less optimism about him, and I will share with you why I'm less optimistic than you are.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm so down to get into Erod. One, because he's a prospect that I'm particularly high on, I feel like, and have been for a minute. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I think maybe it's useful for us to do a little bit of context setting for people, right? So Cubs and Brewers fans, most Twins fans will have at least some type of working knowledge on Emmanuel Rodriguez, but I think it's good to kind of level set a little bit before we dig into this debate here. So Emmanuel Rodriguez, the Twins' kind of biggest in a national free agent signing from the 1920 cycle. They signed him for $2.5 million. I think the Twins tend to pursue this strategy in international free agency, right? Where they tend to target 2 or 3 or 4 medium to high end guys without necessarily targeting the guys who are going to get the biggest bonuses. So Ethan Salas, for example, top bonus getter, an incredible catching prospect for the Padres, who was the top prospect in the last international free agent class. Not typically a guy the Twins would target, but they tend to get 2, 3, or 4 guys in the 1 to 3 million range. And that tends to be their approach. Current rankings for Erod in terms of prospect lists. He's number 48 on MLB Pipeline, number 33 on ESPN, number 51 on Baseball America. So somewhere in the 35 to 50 range. And then just a little bit of context, kind of scouting stuff, right? So he's young for his current level, which is high A Cedar Rapids. He's 20.5 years old, throws and hits lefty. Best tool is plus power, which he's shown in game this season with 16 home runs at the time of writing, Jeremy.
Well, yeah, that number's not going to change because we're not counting postseason.
Okay. We'll get there. I'll save that for later. 863 OPS at high A with a good sample size. He's really worked to kind of create a really solid approach at the plate. Initially, there were a lot of Ks. There was a lot of swing and miss. Now he's taking a ton of walks. It's above average speed, a plus arm. He's at least like a 5, like a 50 in center field. So with the plus arm, the profile is going to look good in right field long term. So that's just like a little background for folks who are less familiar with his context, with his skill set. So let me start by asking you this: if you have some concerns, what gives you pause about Erod? What are the things that you're concerned about that make you kind of doubt his skill set that has everyone so excited thus far?
So the guy that I really, really liked coming up for the Twins was Oswaldo Arcia. He was a prospect that he had warts, but the ceiling I thought was always going to be super high. He was going to be a number 3 hitter on a good team, and when he came up, he kind of teased that. But
Mm-hmm.
there was things that never really translated to successful Major League Baseball. And I get the Oswaldo Arcia feeling with Emmanuel Rodriguez. And Arcia was the type of guy too, where it was like, he's going to be the next big poppy. The Twins
Mm-hmm.
just lost. Oswaldo Arcia hit some home runs in Japan, I think. Maybe not even Japan, maybe Korea. Right? He never deserved the prospect status. I mean, maybe at the time, but never proved that was the type of player that he was.
Mm-hmm.
Emmanuel Rodriguez got off to a blistering start in Fort Myers. Well, I think in the FCL, right? To hurt his knee. Fort Myers, he was really good, or maybe that's what he hurt his knee. So he came into this year with a grand total of 84 minor league games under his belt
Mm-hmm.
and 108 strikeouts, and hit some home runs and teases potential. Now, you mentioned he's young for his level, and that's true. So the where it concerns me is if you have a guy that strikes out a lot at the lower levels, a lot of times it's because he just doesn't have a good handle of the strike zone. And he's swinging at balls off the plate. He can't recognize a slider. Those are all very teachable things, right? And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times you're not going to really change that. You're going to get better, but you're not going to become a different player, right? And with Rodriguez, he doesn't have that. He walks a ton, like you mentioned. His on base percentage, his career on base, he's getting on base 41% of the time that he walks to the plate.
That's wild.
And when he doesn't walk away from the plate, right? And those at bats, he's walking back to the dugout like 38% of the time. So to me, if he can recognize the difference between a ball and a strike and he's striking out this much, it's because he is missing a ton of strikes. Or he's really, really passive, and that seems like that's not going to be a problem. If you can't hit high A pitching and you're that good, what's going to happen when you actually play a major league caliber pitcher almost every day at AA or AAA? Those stats aren't getting better, right? And I think he hits the ball enough with enough power now that it's like, ooh, this guy could be great. And I hope that he is. I hope that I'm wrong. I would love for him to be an answer. I just don't see that being a real thing.
What a beautifully presented set of Erod dingers. So this conversation, before I get into some counterpoints, this conversation, my friend, could not be better timed because as we are recording, right, on Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, currently around 9:30 Central Time, the Cedar Rapids Colonels are currently playing Game 3 of the Midwest Championship Series against Great Lakes, the Dodgers High A affiliate.
Yep.
Ask me what Emmanuel Rodriguez did in his second at bat tonight, Jeremy.
Oh, what did he do? What did he do with the bats in the game before? Tell me what he did in this at bat, which literally happened like the moment before you joined the room. Yeah,
the moment before I logged onto this call, Erod hit a grand slam.
He does that on occasion. Oh,
He
let's
does
watch
that
it.
on
Yeah,
account.
yeah.
Oh, we're
Thanks,
gonna get to
Theo.
watch it. This is the greatest trolling of Jeremy of all time. Not only did he hit a grand slam in a championship deciding game, we get to watch it while Jeremy hangs his head in shame. Erod hit a grand slam in the decisive, shortened to 7 innings, I believe, Game 3 of the Midwest League Championship Series, in which Corey Lewis, by the way, is pitching a beautiful game for Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, real prospect.
I absolutely hear your points, and I think that like that question around passivity at the plate is really an interesting one. So let me offer kind of a counter argument to make Erod's case as a really strong prospect that kind of whose outcomes back up where he's at and how he's perceived as a prospect globally, right? So going kind of in no particular order here. I'm going to start with some kind of hitting numbers here, right? So 476 WOBA at low A, 397 at high A so far in a pretty significant sample size. WRC plus of 196 at low A, which is ridiculous. 145 at high A. That's 455 plate appearances for a 863 OPS. 16 home runs in 2023 compared to 19 home runs in 2021 and 22 combined. 20 steals in 2023 compared to 20 steals in his previous 2 seasons combined. Now, you brought up strikeouts, and that's a legit concern. I think that's fair. Despite the fact that he has almost a 30% K percentage this season, that's offset by a walk percentage of 20.2 this year. For context for people, Eddie Julian walks 15% of the time for the Twins, and we are constantly marveling about his plate discipline, about how that kind of supersedes any slumps that he might have. Erod is walking 5% more than Eddie Julian is. Obviously a different level, but I think it's notable. So as you mentioned, a 400 on base percentage, and there's a ton of ways that he can hurt you, right? So I mentioned the steals. He's at least an average to an above average defender in the outfield. I think he's a plus defender in right field, absolutely with a plus arm. He had a 572 OPS in May for Cedar Rapids, and since then, his OPS has not dropped below 840. So he's a streaky hitter. Absolutely agree with that. I'm going to share one more stat that is the only one that I think I'm going to share that kind of gives credence, in my opinion, to your argument as like a cause for concern. Line drive percentage in 2023 is 18%. That's down from 30% in 2022. And the ground ball percentage is up from 27% last season to 40% this season.
What's his pop-up percentage?
I don't have it in front of me. We can probably grab that real quick.
Here's what I'm really curious about. I want to know what prospects in the past 15 years, maybe 10 years, strike out at this level as frequently as he does.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be some names that are like, oh, it's that bad? Like Joey Gallo?
Mm-hmm.
Because Joey Gallo struck out a ton. Joey Gallo hit for more power. Joey Gallo didn't walk quite as much. Like, are those the types of player? Like, Joey Gallo at 20 years old was in Double-A, striking out 115 times in 250 at-bats. Like, that's a ton. Now, when you connect with the ball, yeah, you're gonna hit for power. And people are going to notice that, and you're going to get promoted, and you're going to get a chance, and you're going to get another chance.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen what's happened with, again, Joey Gallo. He's disappointed a number of teams over and over and over because the reality is he's going to go up there and he's going to strike out. Eddie Julian's he's going to set a single season record for most watched third strikes for the Twins in the Twins history. Like, he hits the ball enough. We also aren't. Emmanuel Rodriguez plays a valuable defensive position right now. Joey Gallo is a Gold Glove caliber outfielder at some point in his career, right?
Okay.
Gold Glove. Eddie
Glad you
Julian,
qualified that.
he doesn't really have a defensive position.
Right.
So, I mean, these are all different players, but if you're 20 years old and you're walking a ton, great. But there has to be a huge percentage of either watching strikes go down the plate, which in game 1 he came up in a big spot, or game 2 this evening, earlier before the Grand Slam. Guys on base, ability to get the game back. He watched 4 straight pitches. 3 of them were strikes. He walks back to the dugout. Like, how is your like awareness if you're not even taking the bat off your shoulders? Like, are you just looking for one pitch and then swinging at that pitch and getting lucky? Because as you get older, that's not going to work.
Yeah. I feel you. I feel you. Although I have to say, you can't credibly say before the Grand Slam, like, because that just undermines anything
the game before. He wouldn't have hit the Grand Slam if he wouldn't have sucked the game before.
So
they would have won.
So producer Theo says fly ball percentage this season is 40.8%, down from 42.2% last year. So not necessarily as much of a drop off as I thought. So I think, like, what we're getting to, right, is this thought. The question is, like, Emmanuel Rodriguez, I think, exists on the cusp of great potential and great performance. And can he continue to make adjustments as he moves from the lower levels of the minor leagues to the upper levels of the minor leagues? And that might sound like a silly, extremely obvious question, but it really is a relevant one for him, because if you look at his performance when he started out in Fort Myers, it was incredibly slow. When he started out in Cedar Rapids, it was incredibly slow. Like I noted, 572 OPS in May, and then no month below 840. I think we are potentially overlooking his ability to develop and make adjustments as he moves up through the levels. Now, if you want to make the contention that he is the Twins' high-end prospect most likely to be traded this offseason, that is something I'm absolutely willing to sign off on, because I don't think the Twins are trading Brooks Lee. They're definitely not going to trade Walker Jenkins. And they are going to have some turnover in their excellently performing rotation heading into this winter. And so, to me, Emmanuel Rodriguez is someone who you could build a pretty exciting trade package around, to potentially strengthen the rotation or another area of the roster, to, ensure that you continue having a playoff caliber major league team headed into 2024.
So I thought that he should have been the guy if they were going to trade somebody at the deadline to move him, because I think the range of outcomes, when we had Carlos on here the other week, he talked about, and Baseball America does it, they have risk associated, and so you're looking for high grade, low risk, and then you have moderate. He will be a high risk guy for me forever.
100%.
And so I think there's a chance that he develops into a all-star, Silver Slugger, right? He could be that, but the other end is it ain't gonna happen. And I don't think like Walker Jenkins' ceiling is just as high, if not higher. It's higher. It's absolutely higher.
It's definitely higher.
His risk is less, and the most likely outcome is much higher. And so, to me, yeah, you're right. But the other side of that is, how often do the Twins trade big time prospects? Like, I'm trying to go through and who have they traded that's a top 100 prospect? Like,
Mm,
am I missing somebody? Because they hold on to they trade the 6 to 10 organizational guys, maybe the top 250 guys, but I don't know that they're trading a top 100 prospect unless
yeah.
they're getting a ton for him.
I think yeah, I agree with you on that point. I think Steer and CES were kind of like on that cusp, right, of breaking into the like 125 to top 100 range when they did the Malley trade. So let me reframe this a little bit differently to ask you this now heading into the off season when suddenly this incredible rotation that really carried the Twins through the first half of the season is going to be it's more uncertain, right? So you got Pablo, he's been amazing. Joe Ryan, a little bit up and down, injury, so on and so forth. Bailey Ober. Then you've got other pieces like Louis Varland, potentially David Festa, and others. But Maeda is probably gone. Gray is probably gone. Did did drafting Walker Jenkins make Erod easier to part with via trade this offseason?
Well, I think whenever you add the type of player that makes another player redundant, it does, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Signing Carlos Correa made potentially trading Brooks Lee or potentially trading Royce Lewis uh, more likely. That didn't happen, right?
Thank
Royce
goodness.
Lewis being really good makes trading Brooks Lee more likely. And I think you deal from where you have assets, and
Mm-hmm.
the Twins had an abundance of hitters, right? Jose Miranda looked like a world beater, and you have Brooks Lee. I think all of that combined made trading Encarnacion Strand, Spencer Steer, even with the getting Joe Ryan and him looking good, trading Cade Pavich, trading some of these other guys, because you deal from the depth, and the Twins
Mm-hmm.
they draft so many hitters that, yeah, drafting Walker Jenkins, sure, but drafting good hitters and having hitters develop, I think that certainly makes it easier to deal Emmanuel Rodriguez or really anybody. And like you mentioned, there's going to be holes in the rotation, and that's what they've done. They've dealt hitters typically, sometimes combined with pitchers, 4 pitchers. Sonny Gray, that was kind of Chase Petty was the exception, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they haven't drafted a lot of pitchers, but they had him for all of like 7 minutes, and then he was gone.
It was short. It was short. And Chase Petty, that's an interesting one that you brought up. Like that trade has worked out incredibly well for the Twins, regardless of how Chase Petty's career ends up. And I am a Chase Petty fan, and he has put up some solid numbers this year. And the arm talent is undeniable. So let me finish with this question before we move on. Then, when the Twins report to Fort Myers in 2024, is Emmanuel Rodriguez still a member of the Twins organization? Yes or no?
Yeah, and I'm going to say that because the likelihood of any single player that you pluck out and say is he going to be, yeah. Um, I don't know what he specifically will bring back, but there's a lot of dominoes that need to fall, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is Sonny Gray? Sonny Gray gets QO'd 100%, and if he doesn't get a deal that he likes, it'd be really easy as a pitcher, in my opinion, especially one that's thinking, do I want to keep pitching
Mm-hmm.
to take $20 million, $21 million to pitch? Now, does Maeda get QO'd? I doubt it,
No,
but
absolutely not.
he's been really good.
No chance. How old is
Chris Pat,
Maeda? 35, 36? Hell no.
yeah, I, Chris Paddock is going to be part of the rotation.
Yep. Didn't even mention him.
36 next season, says Theo. And I think that he's still got he's throwing the ball pretty well, and he's just coming
He is.
back. You're going to be better your second year after Tommy John. It wouldn't shock me if the Twins wanted to go down that road because they want to have depth. They needed all the depth that they had as a
Wait, wait,
pitcher.
wait, 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 wait. It wouldn't shock you if they wanted to go down the road of re-signing him or QOing Maeda.
Re-signing him,
Okay, fair.
a 2-year deal, high in incentives. Um, I just think the Twins know what they have with him. I think he's comfortable here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's been good on this staff, and as a if Gray comes back and you have 7-8 guys, and then you have that wave that we'll talk about later coming up,
Mm-hmm.
I just think you could run it back with this rotation, plus Chris Paddock, plus getting some of these other arms back, and feel really good about your chances. And that's another thing. Like, maybe you don't trade anybody this offseason if you can make some of these moves happen in free agency, and then kind of see what happens with the draft next year. What else can you add to the cupboard, and then deal from depth at the deadline next year?
For sure. It makes sense. So that's going to be our second poll of the day. After what is your range of sleep outcome hours is going to be who won the Erod debate, Jeremy or Jamie. We'll absolutely come back to that.
Well, here's what's going to happen. More Twins fans want you to win, so you win the poll. Yeah,
I chose my side carefully. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to talk Rookie of the Year candidates for 2024. And last week, you touched on something that I think is really interesting and really relevant to the world of prospects at the moment, right? Which is the turnover of the top 100 prospect list. And specifically, you kind of brought up, well, like the quality at the top of the list is like a little bit less than it's been in recent seasons. Like if we go back to like the Julio, Adley, Bobby Witt list, that's a little stronger looking than what we're seeing right now. And part of that, I think, is influence of the new CBA and new rules around the draft, and specifically the prospect promotion incentive pick. So I want to spend a couple of minutes digging into context, and then I'm going to ask you, do the Twins, Cubs, or Brewers have anyone that's a legit candidate as a Rookie of the Year potential winner for 2024? So here's everything you need to know about the prospect promotion incentive pick. So if a player, it's kind of complicated, unnecessarily complicated in my opinion. If a player is in the top 200 on 2 of 3 designated lists, those
top 100.
Top 100. What did I say?
You said 200.
Oh, top 100. That's not even a thing. If a player is on the top 100 of 2 of 3 designated lists, right? So that's MLB Pipeline, Baseball America, and ESPN. And is still a rookie, so less than 60 days of MLB service time, they're eligible for the prospect promotion incentive. If that player wins Rookie of the Year, and the first kind of recipient or benefactor of this was the Seattle Mariners with Julio Rodriguez, their org wins an additional draft pick immediately after the conclusion of the first round. You can also win said draft pick if that player finishes in the top 3 of the Cy Young or the top 3 of the MVP voting, but that seems, even with the incredible rookie class that we're enjoying now, like a little bit of a tall order. So in 2023, Seattle won an extra pick as Julio Rodriguez won AL Rookie of the Year the previous year. They gained the 29th overall pick. That's worth $2.8 million to your draft bonus pool. So for context, right, here's some players that signed for like around that bonus in 2023. Ralphie Velasquez, he was the first round pick of the Guardians. Ty Pete, Dylan Head, Colin Houck, stud prep infielder for the Mets. Charlie Soto, Twins comp pick. Kevin McGonigal, the Detroit Tigers comp pick. Like, this is legit money in your bonus pool. These are all those examples, like even if those are guys you don't know, they're kind of consensus top 35 prospects in the 23 draft, which was the strongest in a decade. So it's potentially a massive advantage. So with that context in mind, are there any candidates, Jeremy, that spring to mind for you as potential guys who could win out for AL or NL Rookie of the Year in 2024? If so, what do you think makes them candidates? Do you think they're going to break camp with their respective big league organization?
Right. Now, I think the one thing too, and maybe I'm wrong on this, if you are called up, if you're not on the opening day roster and you win MVP, you get a full year of service, right?
Yes.
So there's a benefit for the player too.
Yep.
And so looking at the teams that we cover, Brooks Lee for the Twins, kind of a behind the eight ball type choice. The best one the Twins have, probably their number 2 prospect right now, but a top 25-ish prospect in all baseball. The values in the back, combined stats this year, 279, 349, 460 with an 809 OPS, and he's at St. Paul. He's one step away. Hitting home runs, which I think we hoped would continue. He's got 15, and he's doing well enough at shortstop. Now, is he going to play shortstop? I don't think so, right? Correa is going to be there, but Royce Lewis is kind of settled into third. Kyle Farmer might not be back, so if something happened to Correa, could he do it? The thing for me is that the Twins have no reason for him to break camp with the big team, unless Correa's got a deal, right? Correa's going to be the shortstop. Brooks Lee's not. There's not going to be. They're going to DH him. They're going to play him every single day. Moving on to the Cubs. I think there's 2 guys, right? We've talked a ton about Pete Crow Armstrong, and I think there's a legitimate chance that he's going to be in that conversation because he's really exciting. And like I've said before, at some point he's going to get MVP votes because that's the type of player that he is. 37 stolen bases, 20 home runs, Gold Glove defender. Like, he's a dude. Like, there's dudes and there's dudes, and Pete Crow Armstrong's a dude. But kind of a dark horse here, Cade Horton, who was drafted early last year, earlier than anybody anticipated. He's in combined in 23, sub 1 WHIP, which is impressive.
Amazing.
11.9 K per 9 in 88.1 innings across 3 different levels. Only 27 innings at AA. So breaking camp with the team, probably not likely, but I think that's an arm. Like, of all the arms in the minor leagues, he's a top 3 exciting arm. Like higher level AA and above. And so I think if a pitcher comes through and you can pitch every 5 days, now you'd want to bump him up. For him to win Rookie of the Year, you figure he's got to throw well over 88. He wasn't really a full-time pitcher at Oklahoma till the end. So that might be tough, but he's that caliber of pitcher. Again, how many pitchers look like their next big thing and then they aren't? Like, we've seen that all over the place. So, and then the guy that I think has maybe the best chance.
Wait 1 second. Before you go on, because I think you're about to move on to the Brewers. And we said we're going to do this last week. So now is like the time. So you mentioned PCA, right? And I love the Cade Horton highlight because he's been incredible this season. We said last week we're going to, we're all excited about PCA's promotion, getting a chance to see him. You brought up specifically like, oh, he's not going to be an everyday player, but, his skill set's so valuable that we're going to see him sometimes a great runner, a great defender, blah, blah, blah. Do you know how many plate appearances PCA has had with the Cubs since he was promoted?
A couple handfuls.
10.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, he's not one of their best hitters, but he is a defensive replacement.
How would you know? How would you possibly know for a super struggling Cubs team that lost 6 out of 7 to the Diamondbacks in this most recent 3-game series in Arizona? I think he had 1 at bat in 3 games, one of which went 13 innings. Why is he there to sit on the bench and do nothing? I don't get it.
That's a good question. We don't get paid millions of dollars to make these decisions.
This is true.
But you know what? Does he come up if the rosters don't expand? No, he doesn't.
I don't know. Tauchman hadn't exactly been lighting it up in center field for the Cubs. I
don't think he does. And so he's like the luxury pick. And really, if there's concern that he's going to look exposed or whatever, right? it's getting him into the environment and exposing him to some of that, getting big league pitching, all of that stuff. He's getting what he needs. Yeah, 10 plate appearances is pretty surprising
That's
because he's
wild.
been up. But
Wait. I gotta interrupt you again. Producer Theo is breaking news.
what he
All right,
does.
check this out. I'm gonna get your live reaction to this. Breaking news: Byron Buxton slated to start a rehab with the St. Paul Saints tomorrow. Jeremy,
Love it. Okay,
Thursday, September 21st. Your thoughts?
I have questions. Okay, that was one. He'll be DHing. So this is like, let's see if you can hit.
Mm-hmm.
How does he fit onto this playoff roster?
Getting off topic. we need to just ditch minor leagues for a week when the playoffs start and do all things, especially if the Cubs and Brewers both make it, and just deal with the playoffs.
Okay, but I want to talk about the most exciting prospect.
Okay,
let's
hear
going to talk about, and that's Brewers outfielder Jackson Chourio. I'm kind of surprised. If you'd have told me a year ago that he still wouldn't have made his major debut, I'd have been shocked.
For real?
Yeah, because I was
only 19.
But he was so good. I was at him in fantasy leagues, like, to keep him, because I was like, yeah, he's gonna make his debut, and he's just as good as you expected him to be, and so he could certainly win Rookie of the Year next year in the National League, because I think the guy most likely to it's going to be him versus somebody else, in my opinion, and we can talk more about that. But I'm really excited about the prospects of him being in Milwaukee, or wherever Milwaukee moves to, which is good.
Stop.
No, but the reality is he's a stud. Stats 803 OPS, so we're talking. His numbers are very, very comparable to Brooks Lee's. A little bit more home run, 43 stolen bases. I didn't even realize that he was stealing bases at that clip. Like, it's hard to steal bases when you're like Byron Buxton wasn't stealing a whole lot of bases because he would just get to second, and he would jog around the bases. And then you mentioned in the notes about the baseballs changing and how he hit better after that. Like, those are the type of things that I want to see from prospects, not 35% strikeout rates.
Literally stop, Grand Slam. Literally overnight, right? So MLB likes to experiment on minor leaguers, which is kind of messed up. So in the Southern League, they transition from these kind of experimental pre-tacked baseballs to a kind of pack fresh baseball, essentially. Literally overnight, his OPS jumps up and he starts absolutely crushing the ball. 724 OPS in the first half, 887 in the second half after they moved away from the pre-tacked baseballs. That is insane. Absolutely insane.
Throw out some other names of contenders, because
okay,
we gotta talk about
other contenders. All right, no particular order, right? AL, Colson Montgomery, a shortstop prospect for the White Sox.
They'll screw it up.
Evan Carter, who's already up, had an incredible game today. Kobe Mayo of the Orioles. Where do they keep getting these guys? Junior Caminero, a sad trombone for the Guardians, who let him get to the Rays and has put up incredible numbers this year. Ricky Tiedemann is a pitching prospect for the Blue Jays. Wyatt Langford, we got to mention Wyatt Langford, right? Like, now in AAA. Colt Keith has had an incredible breakout season for the Tigers. Is going to be a thorn in the Twin side for a long time. NL contenders, so now we're thinking about Horton, Jackson Chourio, and PCA. I think James Wood, 6'8" outfield prospect for the Nats. Jackson Merrill, Paul Skeens, and Dylan Cruz. I think we got to have in there. Jordan Lawler, who's made his debut already. So, like, is it likely that one of the guys that that we've mentioned wins, it's going to be really crowded, and the trend is in much more aggressive promotions, both post draft and to break camp with the team. So, who do you think has the best shot out of anyone we've kind of mentioned so far?
So when you posted your list, as I go fuzzy, I thought it was hilarious that you didn't include Jackson Holiday
That's so embarrassing. I
because
can't ever come back
he
on the show.
he has not really been slowed
Uh,
down. But then I'm like, okay, well he's young, he just got up to AAA, um, and he hasn't been great at AAA through 64 plate appearances, right? That's fair. Um, so I'm not gonna just like
that's
doubt
a
him.
bad. Nah, you can dunk on me for that. That's a terrible miss
You were
on my
you were
part.
too busy. You were too busy trying to come up with a defense for Emmanuel Rodriguez. Um, but if I have to say the best shot to be a rookie of the year, I'm rolling with Paul Skeens because I think Paul Skeens is the best
Mm,
non-Major League Baseball player in America right now.
interesting.
How about you?
Um, so I'm going back and forth. So like out of the three guys that we mentioned for the teams that we cover, I'm gonna go Churio. I think Brooks Lee's appeal, right, is that he has this floor, right? I don't think Brooks Lee is necessarily going to be a superstar, but I do think he's going to be a solid like 2 to 3.5 WAR player for a ton of years for the Twins. And there's a certain appeal in that for Rookie of the Year, like a solid, steady performer. Um, Churio obviously has the upside of the teams that we've covered, whether he breaks camp with the Brewers. I kind of think that's unlikely, but we'll kind of see how the offseason shakes out. Two guys that spring for me are both with the Rangers. Evan Carter, because I think he's working out the kinks now, and he has a ton of ways to accumulate value, right? So stud center fielder, he's like a little bit PCA-ish. Stud center fielder, got a ton of speed, increasingly hitting for kind of pull side power, working out the kinks in the majors with the Rangers, who are trying to figure out how to get across the line in the AL West right now. And then the other one I got to bring up, man, is Wyatt Langford. Wyatt Langford, and like this is a topic for another day, has an argument to for us to say he has had the best ever professional debut of a prospect in baseball history, even better than Evan Longoria. And maybe that's something we need to dig into. It also makes me kind of relieved that the Tigers did not take him with the third pick. Thanks, Detroit.
Oh, super foggy now. Look at me.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Just like your Erod argument, you are slowly evaporating from our screens. So yeah, I think I'd go with Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford as my two guys. NL is a little bit harder for me. I might go Churio for the NL. We'll see. We'll see. It's absolutely exciting. Cannot believe I left Jackson Holiday off. That is absolutely brutal. And we've lost Jeremy, so here I am talking to myself as we transition away from the Rookie of the Year. Oh, there he is. There he is. You made it. We're going to transition away from Rookie of the Year conversation to finish, as we always do, with listener questions. Just want to start here with some words of appreciation. You guys ask awesome questions. We really appreciate folks getting in touch on a weekly basis, and we like to include these as part of the show. So a couple that are kind of Twins centered and themed tonight. First is from friend of the show, can we call him that? Greg Masterson, Twins Daily contributor. Any Twins players you want to see in the Arizona Fall League? Jeremy, I'm going to kick that one to you first.
So I could be wrong, but at one point I feel like there was a rule in the Arizona Fall League where they had to be domestic players, like they couldn't be able to play in a foreign winter league.
I
don't know
think
if
they have to get a waiver.
Okay,
If
so that
they,
is possible.
yeah, I think it is possible. Yeah.
So the two names that I thought I would like to see David Festa, whose innings decreased. Um, I would like to see him in short stints to see if he's the type of guy that could have something that maybe was a bullpen type arm. He wasn't great this year, but he's one of the highest profile pitching prospects that's close that the Twins have. And I
Mm-hmm.
would just like to see what type of player that he could potentially be for the Twins. The other thing that's weird is with this is like the COVID draft college Rule 5 ad. So there wasn't a lot of college guys that'll have to be added this year. Like there won't be a ton of high school guys that get added next year because of the COVID draft. So Alaric Solari
Mm.
was a second round pick out of Tennessee. I think it was Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
uh, who just hasn't had a ton of at bats. He's been dinged up. He's done some good things when he's been healthy. The health just hasn't been there. It's one of those deals where if the Twins are going to add him, they won't, right? But to see him, um, to see what type of player he is at that level, because this is like big time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have guys like Royce Lewis that take off and have great showings, and Austin Martin. And is he a prospect, or is he kind of yep, it's not going to work, but at least we put him in that when he was healthy. I don't know if he's healthy, but those are two names that really stuck out to me.
Like both of those. I'm going to add two more, borrowing from our friends at MLB Pipeline for the first one, and it's just the theme of the day. I want to see Emmanuel Rodriguez in the Arizona Fall League because he missed a good chunk of time at the beginning of the season. He had a slow start in May. And so my wondering with him, right, is like he's had, what did we say earlier, like 455 plate appearances at high A now. Where is he going to start in 2024? Double A probably. This
Yep.
likely cements and bridges that gap to me. Assuming he's healthy, assuming he's feeling good, I would like to see him get tested there. And then another guy I'm going to highlight is Anthony Prado. If you want a great read, Producer Theo wrote an incredible profile of Anthony Prado and his amazing breakout season with the Saints this season. I think he's another guy who is worthy of some Arizona Fall League time. So absolutely make sure you check that article out. You can probably just Google Anthony Prado, Theo Tollefson, Twins Daily, something like that. It will pop up. It's a really great read. It's a really fascinating piece. He's another guy I would like to see get a shot and tested at that level. Next question comes from Twins takes at takes _ twins on Twitter. Also going to kind of dovetail a question from a friend of the show, Josiah Waldner, in here for the second one of Twins takes questions. So the first one is, what do you guys think of Brooks Lee and David Festa's 2024 outlook? Jeremy, what are you thinking for Brooks Lee?
So I think Charlie Puth wrote a song about
Yeah.
Brooks Lee's 2024, and he named it "One Call Away."
Good Lord.
That's what it's going to be. He's gonna be at St. Paul until he's needed. Like how Royce Lewis came up, it was one of those. He wasn't banging down the door where they had to call him up. It was he's ready. Now let's see, because we have an opening, and I think it's going to be very much the same. Um, give him 2024 as kind of the gap year, and then makes room for him in 2025. That's my take for Brooks Lee. He will make his major league debut next year,
100%.
but it's not going to be as a regular unless something really goes poorly for somebody else.
Yep. Fair enough.
And you have you're going to tell us about David Festa.
David Festa. So here's what I'm thinking. Louis Varland role from 2023. So David Festa, I think, is one, an underrated prospect. You got to see him. He's kind of like a lanky dude, still some room to fill out. I think there's still some projection there. He's already throwing great velocity, already made the jump to St. Paul, like you mentioned, had some success, has generally been used in shorter stints. He's going to be, write this down, he's going to be on top 100 lists coming into spring 2024.
I'll write that down.
David Festa, top 100 prospect, lower end, like 80 to 100 range, coming into spring 2024. I think like the Varland role, right, which is that he's potentially like first guy up from St. Paul, could make a run of 5 or 6 major league starts, get his feet wet, maybe has some things to work on back at St. Paul, so there's a little bit of back and forth. He could also be a great option out of the bullpen if starting doesn't work out. I do think he's like absolutely. He wrote it down. There you go. Did you print it just like the consensus board, or?
No, my printer's working. I think I ran out of ink.
I do think he is a legit candidate to start and to stay in a starting role. So I also think the Festa will see his major league debut in 2024. I think he will get an opportunity to start, whether that's injury or he forces his way into the Twins' plans. Look out for him on a top 100 list near you. Second part of Twins Takes question is, and I know you're going to like this one, what do you think of last year being 2022, what do you think of last year's pitching haul from the draft? And he specifically mentions CJ Culpepper, Corey Lewis, and Zebby Matthews as guys who have performed well since being drafted by the Twins in their 2022 class. Most of those guys kind of in the mid rounds. What are your thoughts?
So I think that's my favorite story that's like going to be written, right? Because the Twins did really, really well in that draft with these pitchers. They went, it seems like forever without developing a starter. Like Anthony Swarzak, Kyle Gibson, Jose Barrios. Like that's a long period of time with drafted guys. Like it just wasn't happening. And so now you've drafted a whole bunch of dudes in one draft that look like they could be potential, maybe not frontline guys, but potential starters. And if not that, at least potential major league pitchers. And so I think this whole group feels like something special. I think Corey Lewis is going to be a big league pitcher sooner than later. Like he's going to just keep jumping up. And CJ Culpepper is young, and like he's the name that I would hear. Like people would talk about him in his group, and then all of a sudden he started doing really good things. He got promoted, things kind of slowed down, but in my opinion, he's going to be someone that continues to add velocity as he fills out. Maybe becomes a relief guy, and is going to be like a back end relief guy. So you're going to get at least 2 quality starters out of this. That's not even mentioning guys you're going to talk about, and Connor Prelip, who it's icing on the cake if anything happens with him. This is a draft that had Brooks Lee, so this is has the makings of a really, really good draft.
You know, something we got to do on a future episode as we get close to closing out here is do some like longer term draft reviews, right? So like next spring, let's take a look at the back of the 21 and 22 draft, because the Twins of the last few years have had some real bangers. And I am sick and tired of people tweeting about and asking about the Twins pitching pipeline. Falvey's pitching pipeline is this annoying Twins Twitter trope, because it's absolutely here already and it's only getting better. At one point this season, 40% of the Twins starting rotation in Louis Varland and Bailey Ober was made up of guys that were drafted and developed in the later rounds in-house. Matter of fact, today, a beautiful example of that, right, was Hunter Green, number 2 overall pick in 2017, against Bailey Ober, 346th overall pick in 2017, who signed for $125,000 and is now put up two F-WAR plus this season. But I do want to highlight a couple of additional guys there. Seth, friend of the show, Seth Stows, always yells at me when I don't mention Kyle Jones. Kyle Jones was taken in this draft also and is often overlooked because he started at Cedar Rapids instead of starting at Fort Myers. So he's another arm with a ton of potential. Had a little bit more mixed results at the beginning, but also started at a higher level than all of those guys. And then another guy that I have to mention is I think Tom Froming's favorite of the 2022 draft class, which is Andrew Morris. He was actually, I think the highest selection of the
Mhm.
pitchers in that class.
Yeah, well, Prelip and then him.
Prelip and then him. Fourth round pick, 114th pick overall out of Texas Tech, another college pitcher that has just had tremendous results. If we look at his 2023 stats over 2 levels, 84 innings pitched, struck out 79, 288 ERA, 125 whip, fastballs up into the mid 90s. Has some really interesting stuff. So the Twins, man, they are really doing some things with drafting and developing pitchers and adding velocity in the mid to late rounds. So that's a great question that Josiah Waldner also added on to about like how excited are you about this group? Extremely. I'm also going to add that is a group that I think could be dealt from potentially this offseason because there's a ton of guys at a similar level that are all very exciting. So would not necessarily be surprised if one of those guys got traded away from the org this offseason.
Well, and we didn't mention, and this kind of deviates, and I know that we're gonna shut it down soon, but Pearson Ole was really
Insane.
good. Yeah. So that's just
Insane.
like I think the reality is when you add 5 quality pitchers in that draft, because you're not assuming that all 5 of those are gonna what these guys did in this year. It really kind of lights a match behind some of the guys that they're coming after because they're just plowing through the organization, and you either got to get it right or get out of the way. And if they pass you up, it's over.
Yep.
So like Pearson Ole's year, like that wasn't talked about nearly enough, in my opinion. He was phenomenal.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And that is he's a great example, Jeremy. Like after he was promoted to Wichita, so Pearson Ole was drafted as kind of like a soft tossing control artist, 14th round in 2021, 429th overall pick from Grand Canyon, who have had a number of significant draft picks since. But after he was promoted to Wichita in this season in 2023, made 14 starts, 269 ERA, 74 Ks in 87 innings, walked 13, 095 whip. Like what? That's a remarkable performance. So
I mean, he's on the doorstep. Like he threw 87 innings at Double A and was phenomenal. There's no reason to think that he couldn't. He probably won't because they'll fill, as the Twins and most organizations do, fill AAA with like some retread arms. Pearson Ole will throw a significant amount of innings next year for St. Paul.
Yep.
And there's no reason to think that you have Festa as the Louis Varland type. There's no reason to think Pearson Ole couldn't be that type of player for the Twins next year. And it's like he came out of nowhere, even though he didn't.
Amazing stuff. That'll do. We're right around an hour, so that'll do for us today. As always, want to finish by thanking you guys for support, for downloading, for sharing, for retweeting, for interacting with the show. Always a lot of fun. Thank you guys for continuing to supply us with awesome questions and topics. We had intended to talk through AFL rosters on this episode, but they still haven't dropped, man. Kind of surprised by that. But they have absolutely been touted to drop this week. So imagine we will cover Arizona Fall League rosters and selections there in our next episode next week. As always, want to thank producer Theo, MVP of the show, for keeping everything running smoothly. If you like what you heard, please download, retweet, and share what you hear. We appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys next week. Until then, take it easy.